All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar in our series called The Animal Loss Grief Journey. Tonight, we are going to be covering the topic of understanding types of grief and how we process it. So our webinar series is hosted by the Center for Veterinary Social Work as well as Veterinary Social Work Services here at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. The vision for the center is to attend to the welfare of all species through excellence in global interprofessional practice. And if you are not familiar with veterinary social work, you're participating this evening in veterinary social work, believe it or not. So veterinary social work, when you boil it down, is essentially caring for the humans anywhere that there is a human-animal bond. The Veterinary Social Work Services is a collaboration between the College of Veterinary Medicine and the College of Social Work at UT. So we do offer certificates. So I am taking the certificate during the completion of my Master's of Science in Social Work. But there's also a postgrad certificate for anyone who's already a social worker and really interested in this certification. And for those of you that are in the animal world, there's also a veterinary human support certificate that is geared towards those that have a great amount of animal knowledge that want to learn a little bit more about veterinary social work through that lens. And so when we think about social work, social workers support individuals, families, communities, and societies. So you notice the 4 quadrants of social work that we have here. And these different ways that social workers help humans we refer to as micro, so you can think about that as therapy for individuals and families. Meso, which is groups, organizations within communities, as well as macro. That's the large scale change and using research, policy development to impact entire communities and populations. This webinar series would be considered meso social work since we're working with a small group in a community, and we will be exploring several of the quadrants of veterinary social work throughout our webinar series. So a little bit about me. So my name is Valerie Bogie. I am the current veterinary social work intern and program assistant through Veterinary Social Work Services at University of Tennessee. I will be graduating in May of 2025. My background is actually in the animal world. So I have over 20 years of experience caring for animals in many facets. That is veterinary hospitals, animal shelters, zoos, aquariums, dog trainer, dog owner. So it really is my experience in all of those arenas that led me to veterinary social work and providing support for people just like you. So these are my fur babies left to right, my senior crew. So we have Noodles, in the center is Mona, and then Wiley as well. So what are we talking about tonight? So we are talking about grief, talking about how it's affecting us, types of grief, and a couple different grief theories. So again, this is just part 1 of the series. So I'm trying to keep it simple in that regard as far as what we are covering together tonight. I want to make sure we are building a nice solid foundation. So what is grief? In many ways, it's very hard to define because it is a very individual experience, but in so many other ways, it is a common thread that all of us experience at one point in our life. So I like to think about grief as a natural reaction to loss. And notice that it's not death, it's loss. Because loss can come in other forms as well. Obviously, death is a very final loss that we might deal with. But think about if an animal has been rehomed, or maybe an animal ran away. If you are an animal professional, veterinary professional, Maybe you move departments and start working with different animals. Maybe the humans that are your coworkers are leaving your facility or your hospital that you're working at. So there's loss on both the human and animal side. And just acknowledging that the loss of a human or an animal in your life, whether it is at work or at home, is going to impact you. But for the purpose of this webinar series, we're going to focus on the grief we experience when an animal we care for dies. And so that can be as a pet owner, a veterinary professional, an animal trainer or caretaker, and more. So before we can really start talking about grief, we first have to start with our emotions. So first, let's all just take a big, deep breath together. Give ourselves that moment of silence. And think about a special animal that is no longer with us. That's a simple yet meaningful way that we can acknowledge loss together. And I think we've all probably had a busy day as we're sitting down to listen to this. So I think that's always nice to take that deep breath. So thanks for doing that. So if anyone's familiar with Brene Brown, she's done a large amount of research on emotions, and something that she has found with her research is the average adult human can only name 3 emotions, typically happy, sad, and angry. But there are so many more options. And in order for us to understand and really process our grief, or even be able to support others that are grieving, we first need to work on expanding our own emotional vocabulary and understanding. So this emotion sensation wheel was created by Lindsay, and it's beautiful. I love it. And so we can use it in a couple different ways as a tool. So you can see kind of those main emotions along the center of the circle. So a lot of times those are the easy ones, especially when we were growing up. Those are the ones that we were taught to be able to identify. So sometimes we can start there and then get curious and see where that might actually fall in that second round of the circle. So is your anger actually hurt? Is your sadness actually guilt? You can also start from the outside. So those are the body sensations. Those are the things that we feel when we have some emotions going through our body. So sometimes that might be sweaty palms, that could be body tension, that could be the chills. It could be, feeling like your heart is racing or that you're getting really warm. So sometimes if you can't necessarily pick out your emotion, sometimes you can kind of start to figure out how your body is feeling and then work your way inside. And we are all beautifully human, which means you can experience more than one emotion at the same time. Utilizing this tool can also be really helpful to have a little check-in with yourself. So thinking about looking at this and thinking, what are 2 words that can help explain how you are feeling today or in this moment? So as you're going through your grief journey, wherever you might be with that, that can just be a really helpful tool to kind of get a pulse and a sense of how you are feeling. And emotions and sensations are just a few of the ways that we experience grief. So just talked about the emotional side of things and the physical sensations. There's also other physical things that can happen when we are grieving. That might be changes in sleep, changes in appetite, and maybe some additional fatigue. There's also changes in our behavioral and cognitive responses. You might be crying a lot, you might be withdrawn from social interactions or hobbies, you might feel like you just have the inability to focus on tasks, or even having trouble remembering things or making decisions. For many of us, there is a spiritual response, and death and loss typically brings up a reevaluation or questioning of what you believe in, and some of those bigger questions of what does it all mean? And then there is the cultural and social responses, and that might be rituals and ceremonies that are typically practiced in your culture, and really relying on those support systems. So I want to focus in on that behavioral and cognitive response. Get a little nerdy with you right now because we really got to understand not only our emotions, but also how our brain is working through all of this. Because I think it's going to help everything else make a lot more sense as we are working through our animal loss grief journey. So I think from the get-go, we can all agree that when we are grieving, we are stressed out. Right. So thinking about that, and there are actually 5 emotional brain states. This is one of the really cool things I loved going from the animal world to the human side of things is we are just large mammals and there are so many parallels between the animal world and the human world. And this is one of them because a lot of us are familiar with the flight, fight, freeze response in animals. We have that too. So this is a really great way to illustrate that and how this can affect us when we are stressed out. So when you look at brain state 1 and brain state 2, that is when we are kind of cool, calm, and collected. That's when you feel like you can be creative. You're generally positive and balanced. You're just, just kind of doing pretty well. Socializing and just feeling overall pretty healthy. And then we start to get into the 3, and that's starting to tiptoe into higher stress levels. And so might feel a little bit more rigid, starting to feel a little bit more moderate with your behavior. And then we get into 4 and 5. And so it really is when our brain function is changing and where that flight, fight, freeze response is coming into play. But if you think about those times when you are really stressed out or you really are dealing with those intense emotions and sensations with grief, a lot of times we are more reactive. We are irrational sometimes. We feel unbalanced and overwhelmed, and sometimes can have unhealthy and destructive behavior or coping mechanisms. So with how our brains work, here's a couple different examples. So the part that is highlighted is in yellow is the prefrontal cortex. That is part of our frontal lobe. So when we're in that lower brain state, 1 or 2, again, cool, calm, collected, everything's humming along pretty well. All systems go, right? So all parts of our brain are functioning. And then as we start to escalate in that higher brain state and our stress or our grief response is escalating, that kind of goes offline. It really is that flight, fight, freeze from our amygdala, from the back of our brain that is really coming to the forefront and kind of taking over. So again, going back to that definition of grief, it is a natural response. These brain states and how our brain works is also a natural response and much more reactionary when we get into those higher stress levels. Because that prefrontal cortex, when that's offline, there's a lot of things that can go sideways. Because the prefrontal cortex is responsible for body regulation, communication, emotional balance, flexibility, empathy, insight, fear extinction, intuition, and morality. So just thinking about when you're stressed, when you are grieving, you are not able to really think clearly. You can't problem solve. It just things just aren't going, quite as easily as they usually are. And that is okay. That is a natural response. So please give yourself some grace because what you're going through is a natural response. And while there is not necessarily a normal as we all go through our grief journeys individually, there's a lot of common things that happen as we are going through our grief journeys. So now that we've geeked out a little bit with science, thank you for humoring me. So we're going to dive into the different types of grief. There are many types of grief, believe it or not. And we're not going to cover all of them, but I picked out a couple to kind of highlight the ones that I interact with more often when dealing with veterinary social work and those just like yourselves that are grieving animals that you are your pets or that you're caring for on a daily basis. So the first one I wanted to start out with is anticipatory grief. So that really is when the animal has not passed yet, but we are thinking about when they are going to pass. So I know this is something I deal with. Those adorable senior dogs that I had in my picture are 13, 15, and 17 at this moment. So this is something that comes up for me and wondering, are they in pain? Am I doing the right thing? Do I have to make a decision? Are they breathing? All right. And having that, little bit of panic sometimes when they are very, very still, when they're sleeping and just in that deep sleep. But that's that anticipatory grief and thinking about how sad I am going to be when one of them inevitably is going to pass away. And so it's really just sometimes, just getting really worked up about that because we're just thinking about what life is going to be like and how hard it is going to be when it actually happens, but they're still here. So obviously it happens with geriatric animals, or if you have an upcoming euthanasia planned where you have set a date and you are working through this. So things that can be helpful when you are experiencing anticipatory grief might be really thinking about how you can spend some intentional time with the animal. And also increasing your choice and control. And so what I mean by that is thinking about quality of life parameters. There's so many really great resources out there as far as how we can kind of take things day by day, measure how we think our animal is doing, feeling, how they are doing every single day. Also, talk to your veterinarian, talk to your animal professionals, exactly what the euthanasia procedure is going to look like, because that can help take out some of the surprises that may or may not happen during that. So if you can have some time with those experts to kind of just help you understand what that whole process might look like. Another type of grief is ambiguous grief. So this can occur when there's been a loss without closure. So if an animal has run away, we don't know what happened. Did they die? Did someone else take them in? Are we searching the local lost and found in the shelters and things like that? So that you never really have that closure of what happened to that animal. So that can make your grief journey even more complicated. Or if you weren't present when your animal passed, what if they passed while there was a pet sitter, or it is an animal that is being shared between separated partners or something like that? That can also make it more difficult as you're trying to deal with your grief. So just recognizing that, again, all of those feelings are normal and trying to just give yourself some time to kind of work through that because it is a stressful situation to lose a pet and or an animal that you've been caring for or working with. And so just giving yourself that time and just always being open to accepting help, whether it is a support group, working individually with a therapist or a veterinary social worker as options there. And then acute grief is usually the time frame that we consider when other people recognize our grief and our loss. So usually that kind of smaller time frame, couple weeks, maybe up, to a month or so after the loss has occurred, after the death has occurred. So this is the time when people are sending cards, they're calling more, they're flowers, food, checking in on you more often, people offering to assist with tasks and things like that. So this is when you definitely are grieving and other people recognize that you are having a hard time. So same ones for this one, just because I think they really ring true for this as well. But accepting that help. So if people want to help and do things for you, bring you things, let them. And again, giving yourself some grace and some time when possible to be able to really process everything that's going on. And then we can get into complicated grief. So this is when there's been some time that has passed since the death has occurred, but you're just really having a difficulty moving on. You're still unable to focus on little else outside of that death. This might occur more frequently if it's a sudden or traumatic loss, but really still can occur for any type of loss. And it's kind of just being in that heightened state of grief. So those heightened stress states and those brain states, and really is kind of holding you back from being able to move forward in your healing journey. And this is really considered a more serious challenge. And this is really one of the ones that we suggest to seek professional mental health support, just because they are the ones that are going to be trained to help you, get to that point of healing. If able, sometimes just having a break from work, because no matter what animal we have lost, life is going on full speed ahead. And so sometimes just having some time and space with taking one thing off of your plate, one responsibility off of your plate, even just for a little bit to give you some breathing room, can be really helpful. And then my favorite, not my favorite necessarily, but the one where I had a big aha moment, that is disenfranchised grief. So coming from an animal caretaking role, this is the one that has resonated with me the most. Because when we lose an animal, not everyone gets it. Right? You might have friends and family that do, and they loved the animal just as much as you did, or coworkers that loved the animal just as much as you did. But that's still usually a smaller percentage. You might have people say, oh, it was just a horse, it was just a dog, it was just a fill in the blank. You can just get another one. Shelters are full, right? So there might be some kind of offhanded comments that make us a little resentful about who has shared that with us. And then even for animal professionals, you think about those animals that you're caring for. It's not your pet. You might have pets too, but those animals aren't your pets, but those are animals that you do still have a bond and a relationship with, whether it is the animal at the shelter that's been there for a couple months, one of your favorite clients as a veterinary professional, or some of those amazing animals that's used in aquariums that you're going to work to care for every single day. So just understanding that the disenfranchised grief is really the grief that isn't necessarily acknowledged or accepted by the general population. So I think we're making a lot of really great strides for accepting and understanding animal loss, but I think this is still a pretty big factor. And then things that you can do is whoever your safe people are, lean into them. So if you are working with a team, being able to support each other in that way. If it is a pet, again, you'll learn very quickly usually who you can trust and who really understands what you're going through with that deep connection that you had with that animal. And then really trying to find ways to honor the animal in your own way. And that is later webinar where we're going to take a deep dive into all of the ways that you can start to think about memorializing an animal that feels right for you. Deep breath. I know it's a lot. So one of the last things we're going to dive into before we head into our Q&A is grief theories. And most of us, myself included, are familiar with the 5 stages of grief. So this is the Kubler-Ross model. And this was introduced by psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in her 1969 book on Death and Dying. So the original intent for this model was to explain the emotions that someone with a terminal illness is going through. So it wasn't actually intended for us to utilize when we are grieving something else. It's actually someone trying to deal with their own mortality, essentially. And in a second book that she published in 2004, she remarked that the 5 stages are not stops on some linear timeline in grief. Not everyone goes through all of them or goes through them in a prescribed order. And I think that is really helpful to hear, because I think for those of us that are familiar with this, we think it's a checklist. We do think it's kind of, there's some stops on this, this train. And once I get to the end, then I'm healed. I'm done grieving, and I shouldn't miss this animal or feel this way anymore. But that is not how it works. I'm very thankful for her additional insight that she has shared. And in current social work and mental health practice, this model is kind of considered outdated, and also really hasn't been scientifically validated. But again, I think it's a really good stepping stone to go from the familiar, because I think we can also notice that the emotions and things listed here are things that we do go through while we're grieving. But like Dr. Kubler-Ross shared, not necessarily all, and not necessarily all in that order. So what else is out there? How can we help identify our journey if this isn't it? What else is out there? So one of the ones that we talk about a lot with veterinary social work and social work in general, that's a little bit more updated, is the dual process model. So this was developed by Margaret Strobe and Inc. Shoot. So this model really encourages some oscillation between loss-oriented and restoration-oriented activities. And so when we think about loss-oriented stressors, that's actively engaging and processing emotions related to the loss. Maybe that's taking items to the animal shelter to donate. Maybe that is, if it's an animal at work, taking their name down off some boards or off some things in that way. Reminiscing and reflecting on memories, looking at pictures and videos, and really just sitting with your feelings and expressing the pain of that loss, which is all really heavy. It is all very helpful for your healing. But if you do that all the time, you can also then get back into that higher brain state of being just fatigued and overwhelmed all the time. So with the dual process model, this is also understanding that you can do both. You can still be grieving, but still have joy or excitement about something that is upcoming in your life, just in a way that we can experience more than one emotion at the same time. So when we think about those restoration-oriented stressors, that might be adapting to life without the deceased animal and taking on some new responsibilities and moving forward. Engaging in activities that distract you from the intensity of the grief, going to a movie, going to a concert, going to a social event that even though you're kind of unsure if you want to go, but you're just going to go, so you're just not sitting at home. Those are examples of great restoration oriented stress relievers, I would say. Redefining yourself and establishing a sense of self that includes the loss, and then that planning for future goals and finding a new purpose. So think about what you have lost when you have lost an animal and you are experiencing a lot of emotions. If it was a planned euthanasia, there's the emotions anticipating it, during and after. And for many of us, again, life doesn't stop. So if it's a pet at home, you might have other pets or other humans in your household that you have to care for. If you're an animal professional, there's other animals that need your care. So we don't always have the time in the moment to be able to deal with our grief in that moment. So that's why this is nice, because you have that choice and control for yourself to be able to kind of go through either side of this. So some of the benefits of the dual process model is that it really does allow for individuals to control their own non-linear journey. And it also encourages flexibility and giving yourself permission to take a break from the grief, to experience life and generate those activities. I hear it so often that, well, if I'm not sad, then it means that I don't miss them. But this process model is really allowing you to say, I can miss them and still hold space for my grief, but I can also start to look forward to the future. And then another grief theory that resonates a lot with the animal caretakers and owners that I have worked with is the continuing bond theory. So this was originally developed by Dennis Class, Phyllis Silverman, and Stephen Nickman, and it really challenges the idea that healthy grieving requires individuals to detach completely from the deceased. So what this theory is encouraging is that we maintain an ongoing connection with the deceased. Because when we think about grief, it's also a huge disruption in our routines. And that is one of the hardest parts of the grief as well, because we're dealing emotionally with how our heart is feeling. And then our brain still has that muscle memory of some of those routines that have been established with that animal in our life. And now the animal is gone and everything kind of changes, right? So the continuing bonds theory could come in many forms. And it's really thinking about the animal is no longer here physically, but how can we still have connection? So that might look like reminiscing about favorite memories, maybe displaying pictures, planting a tree, wearing specific symbolic jewelry, doing something creative with that animal's favorite toy, food bowl. I've even had people share that they will keep their animal's collar or some memorial item from that animal in their purse, in their pocket, and walk around the block on the same walking route if it was a dog. Talking to the animal, writing a letter or journaling, sometimes writing directly to the animal and letting them know that you miss them can be really restorative. And again, we're going to talk all about additional ways to memorialize in another part of this series. But what the continuing bonds theory really helps with is it encourages adaptation. So rather than just moving on and just creating an entirely new life without the animal involved, it allows you to adapt to life without the animal physically being there while you're maintaining an emotional connection. For some people, that's talking out loud to them, and that's okay too. So really, I'm just continuing to explore what that could look like. And again, your journey is unique to you. Your relationship with the animal that you have lost is also unique to you. But just having some frameworks, having some vocabulary about all of this is hopefully really helpful for everybody. So as a reminder, the next webinar next month in February is focusing on how to support yourself and other grieving hearts. If you are here today, you will get another reminder. And again, everything will be recorded and added to our YouTube channel. So you'll have the access to watch and share from that platform as well. But I am going to go ahead and see if I can stop the recording. Let's just stop the share. Okay.